Hello, I am Joe Zavala, and today, me and my partners, Cecilia Aguayo and Carmen Rodriguez, will be presenting our digital media project. We will be discussing the types and sources of bias that potentially affect forensic expert decision-making and lead to criminal justice implications.
Bias is when an individual, conscious of it or not, is prejudiced in favor or against one thing. Source of bias may include influence that alter our decision-making or interpretations of conclusions. Therefore, we must address biases in forensic science. The three main types of bias we will review include confirmation bias, contextual bias, and expectational bias. Confirmation bias showcases when an individual is tasked with the interpretation of evidence with already existing conclusions from others. For example, a latent print examiner may be tasked to peer review 2 latent fingerprint samples that have been disclosed to be a match by the previous examiner, thus creating a source of bias or influence to the examiner's conclusions. Next is contextual bias, which demonstrates when an individual is influenced by external or irrelevant information. Forensic toxicologists may have access to case information irrelevant to their task, which may bias their decision and testing strategies. For example, if a deceased individual in case files is disclosed to be a known heroin addict, a forensic toxicologist in return will then take this information and direct their focus into the confirmation and quantification of heroin being present in the individual, without considering the possibility of other drugs being present or presumed to cause the death of this individual.
Finally, expectational bias is when a forensic analyst expects a certain result and that can affect their examination. This is closely related to confirmation bias. An example of this would be if a latent print examiner overhears a conversation about a person whose prints were submitted and is made aware that the person resembles the criminal sketch. Their examination is then affected. Another phenomenon in forensic science regarding bias is the snowball effect. The snowball effect is when outside information makes its way in and starts to circulate between examiners and starts to become a bigger issue. This could be stopped or minimized in the early stages by trying to eliminate outside information or any irrelevant information.
The FBI arrested Brandon Mayfield, an American Muslim, as being a material witness for the terrorist bombing of trains in Madrid, Spain. He was identified as the source of a fingerprint found on a bag of bomb detonators. Spanish National Police would inform the FBI they had positively identified the fingerprint as belonging to an Algerian national, causing FBI laboratories to withdraw their conclusion and closing the case. Confirmation bias caused LPU examiners' interpretation to be adjusted for reasoning backwards from features visible on the fingerprint. Confirmation bias affected fingerprint examiners who admitted if the person identified did not have Muslim characteristics, they would have revisited the findings with more skepticism and possibly caught the error. The FBI issued an apology letter and $2 million to Brandon Mayfield and his family for the suffering caused by the fingerprint misidentification. The FBI would implement measures to ensure this outcome does not happen again. Bias could have been avoided by initially examining evidence from the crime scene and documenting their findings before making comparisons, which would eliminate the potential influence on how information is processed. Shielding forensic examiners from irrelevant investigation information, such as confessions and eyewitness identification, prevents their conclusion from being tainted and reduces bias in forensic science. The importance of minimizing confirmation bias in forensic science is to prevent wrongful convictions from being made, which affects the lives of innocent people and their families.
As mentioned before, forensic examiners should participate in blind testing and not be told any irrelevant information that could influence their outcomes. When checking over other forensic examiners' work, it is important for them to be left in the dark and not know what the previous examiner concluded. This will help prevent future false positives like the Mayfield case. In conclusion, there are different types of biases in forensic science that affect forensic expert decision making, and these biases can lead to false conclusions which harm the people involved.